Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Rebecca Jones, and today we're going to learn a little bit about specifically abstract flowers. So what is the purpose behind painting an abstract art, a piece of abstract art? To me, it's expressing an idea to the viewer with a little bit of clarity, just enough to give their imagination full control. So I'm excited to just dive right in with you all. Let's go. So I started with this base deep green color and went straight away to using a lighter green, making thin lines for stems. Next I'm taking this thick rounded tip brush and painting some rough leaves, keeping them parallel to each other on both sides. Next I'm adding a light green as a highlight to all of my leaves. And I like to do these little dot clusters randomly throughout my paintings. So here I am doing that, and I'll come back to those as I add different shades of colors to my paintings. Same with these random brush strokes. I'm making them in little clusters and I'll add to them as we go. From there I'm using a very bright light green, and I am making very curvy random stems. These are going to be for some flowers. The great thing about abstract art is it does not have to be perfect whatsoever. So these are my leaves. They're kind of little dashes rather than perfect normal leaves that we would see. And of course we need some flowers, so I'm just going to start with a little base and fan my petals out. Although it may look like I'm using a light pink, I'm actually using paint that is a light khaki beige. From there I'm adding some highlights to my flowers using a basic white, and these are just random little dashes once again. Now I am adding black to the stems of my leaves, giving it a little bit of clarity but not too much. I also thought it was a neat effect to add a little shadowing to my stems. I just want to make sure you give that a little tail on the end. Here I'm painting some white fluffy little flowers, and I'm adding some gray just to give it a little more contrast. The next one is more of a bud, and I'm adding some beige clusters to that, and once again using my excess color to add to those clusters of dots. From there I added some brown stems and little random dots to the stems as well. Now on to our main flower. So this one I'm using a dark shade of brown, creating my first petal. It's pretty thick, rounded, but pointed towards the top. And I'm going to do the same thing on the sides, trying to focus my petal towards the upper left corner somewhat. Next, following the edge of my petals, I'm going to add a pointed edge to each one. Now I'm going in with an even lighter shade of brown while my dark brown paint is still a little bit wet. Because I'm trying to make my flower face in a certain direction, I am making the petals at the bottom of the flower smaller than the ones at the top, and this gives it the effect that it's looking upward. Now I'm adding an even lighter shade of brown, and this is the center of my flower. The paint is still a little wet, and I'm going to add my outer edge, which is going to give it a depth on my flower. On an abstract painting with flowers, I do like to add some random little petals that aren't really connected to the actual flower. Next I'm adding white for a highlight on my petals. And I did create another flower in the upper right corner. I made this flower by following pretty much the same technique as the bigger flower. Adding highlights and shadows, I like to keep in mind that my light source is coming from the top of my page, at least here in this painting it is. So I want to add that lighter shade to the upper part of my petals and keep those shadows on the bottom. Now here you can see I'm using a darker brown, and I'm creating those shadows right up against the white, so it gives it a nice contrast. This for me is the really fun part where you just kind of get to have fun with the fact that you're making an abstract painting. So I'm adding some random leaves where I think it looks best with a very light lime green. And I like to create certain petals with certain flowers. So you can see here I'm using these cute little rounded, pointed petals for the white flowers and trying to keep those near each other. Next, I made some little beige flowers. I just felt like my painting needed it. I didn't add any highlights to these flowers, but I did add a dark brown center while the flower was still wet. These flowers are perfect for any random little voids you might have on your painting. Fun pop of shimmery, shiny goodness, I used this rose gold metallic paint, and I'm adding some little details to random flowers throughout the painting. I also chose to highlight some of my stems. So I would encourage you to use this sparingly, as a little bit does go a very long ways. I didn't originally plan on doing this with my painting, so it's totally optional for you, but I did go in with this blue dark green color and made some huge leaves on my painting, and it did cover up some of my details on my painting, but I was really excited to give another layer of depth to my painting. So if you want to do this, these are pretty tropical looking leaves, and I added some highlights with a lighter shade of the same color. And from there I added just a center with some little details going out on the leaf. How cool is that? You're basically like a pro now. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe down below. Look forward to seeing you next week, and as always, happy painting.